Another victory for the Fed and the US Treasury. They've saved the financial system once more. One more victory like this, and the Federal Reserve is going to be busted. The Fed started with about $800 billion on its balance sheet at the beginning of the year. After this most recent deal, the $85 billion bridge loan to AIG, estimates are that their balance sheet is down to about $175 billion or $200 billion. Of course, the Fed's partner in crime, the US Treasury, can give the Fed more money. The Treasury, after all, owns the printing presses. They can print more bonds, they can sell more bonds, and they can put the Fed back on a sound basis. But you've got to look at this and say, all right, if we keep drawing down the balance sheet of the Fed, if we keep drawing down the balance sheet of the U.S. Central Bank, at what point do the rating agencies go, hey, the U.S. Central Bank is basically digging itself a bigger and bigger hole at the same time as countries like China and Brazil are putting aside surpluses. Now, if you remember, the reason that AIG faced an immediate crisis was because the rating agencies, Standard & Poor's and Moody's, all decided to downgrade their debt. They said, oh, this isn't as good a risk as it used to be. So far, Standard & Poor's and Moody's has decided they're not going to change their rating for the U.S. debt. But one of the things that anybody's got to look at is what's going on at the Fed, what's going on at Fed balances, and contrast that with what's going on in the rest of the world. If Brazil gets a credit upgrade, like it did earlier in this year, and the Chinese central bank keeps socking away more reserves, at some point the contrast between what's going on in those countries and what's going on in the United States becomes too tough even for the credit agencies to ignore. Standard & Poor's and Moody's haven't exactly been ahead of the curve on any part of this crisis, and I don't expect them to be ahead of the curve on this one. Downgrading the sovereign credit of the United States is a huge deal. I don't think they're likely to go there until they have to. Each time the Fed draws down its balance sheet for one of these rescues, and each time the Treasury has to put more money into the Fed, the contrast between what's going on here and what's going on in stronger economies and stronger financial systems gets a little harder for the agencies to ignore. And that's the huge danger, a downgrade to the U.S. credit rating that's lurking somewhere down the road, as a reason why we have to come up with a better solution than simply slapping a patch on each problem as it comes along. This is Jim Jubeck for Jubeck's Journal on MSN Money.